Hello, everyone. I'm Vikki Spruill, the president and CEO at the New England Aquarium, and I am so excited and honored to welcome Massachusetts Congressman Seth Moulton and New England Aquarium's very own Heather Pettis to this Facebook Live event to talk about the plight of the North Atlantic right whale. Last month, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature uplisted North Atlantic right whales from endangered to critically endangered, making it the only large whale species on the planet in this category. That's a pretty big deal. Being listed as critically endangered is very bad news because it means that these animals are now facing an extremely high risk of extinction. And scientists at the New England Aquarium have been studying North Atlantic right whales for more than 40 years. And it's because of that study and that research that we know that there are likely less than 400 individual whales left on Earth. That's the bad news. We know also that humans are the reason that these whales are going extinct. The good news is, though, that also means that humans can protect these whales from going extinct. And that's what we want to talk about today. Congress, of course, has an important role to play in protecting the North Atlantic right whale. And we are so fortunate here in Massachusetts to have Congressman Seth Moulton working on behalf of these beloved whales. He's an elected official who acts on what he believes in. And that's something that I think we should all be paying attention to as we approach this election season. We are so grateful to you, Congressman Moulton, for your leadership on these issues in Washington. Congressman Moulton has been representing the 6th District of Massachusetts since 2015. He's a former Marine Corps officer and a member of the Democratic Party. Not only has Congressman Moulton sponsored bipartisan legislation to support research to help North Atlantic right whales recover, he was also just very recently successful in securing $6.5 million of funding in the House Appropriations Bill to monitor and research the right whale. So thank you for your efforts, Congressman, and congratulations on this really significant and important win. Thank you again for being here with us today, and I'd like to turn the conversation over to you.
Well, thank you, Vikki. I mean, this is a win for all of us, and thank you so much for setting up this event. I'm an admirer of the work that scientists like Heather and others are doing over at the New England Aquarium to preserve our endangered ocean wildlife. And I'm going to have to bring my daughter Emmy over there soon so she can see all the work that you do. She does have a stuffed right whale, not a real stuffed, a stuffed animal right whale in her bedroom that she likes very much. And I think you gave that to us, in fact. So
I think maybe we did.
She loves her right whale, and we all love our right whales, and we got to make sure that they're still around when Amy grows up. She's 22 months old, and I want them to still be around when she's 10, and that's not a sure thing right now. If you walk into my office in DC, as you have, you notice the large photograph of a right whale breaching the water, and it's a good reminder to our team and to me that they are incredible creatures that we need to fight to save. So we've had some great wins these past couple of years for right whales specifically, but we can't afford to stop there because, as you noted, right whales just moved from endangered to critically endangered. That makes these conversations and subsequent action on the local, state, and federal levels all the more important. So I'm excited to talk to you and Heather today about how we can achieve just that.
That was terrific. Thank you so much, Congressman Moulton. And now I'd like to welcome Heather Pettis to the conversation. Heather, would you like to say a little bit about yourself before we start the Q&A?
Sure, thanks. My name is Heather Pettis, and I'm an associate scientist with the Right Whale Research Program at the Anderson Cabot Center for Ocean Life at the New England Aquarium. I've had the privilege of studying this species of whale for 20 years, which is a little bit hard to believe, but there it is. I love everything about this species. Having spent 20 years, I feel very passionately about the work that we do at the aquarium on behalf of right whales, and really grateful for the opportunity to talk about right whales today.
Congressman, I've recently realized that even though we've been working with you on this issue for several years, you and I have never talked about sort of what motivated you to get involved with the North Atlantic right whale and why you decided to focus on it. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about your personal story and connection.
Certainly from a professional perspective, living here on the North Shore, representing these North Shore communities, we know how important marine wildlife is to our economy, to our tourist industry, to our way of life. But on a more personal level, I mean, look, I remember going to whale watches, going to the New England Aquarium when I was growing up here in Massachusetts. And one of my favorite shows was actually The Voyage of the Mimi, which of course followed right whales, humpback whales off the Massachusetts coast. And so at a very young age, I would sit in front of the TV and learn about whales. And so this is something I've been, passionate about for a while. It was 2017 that my team and I saw unusually high mortality rates, and spoke to stakeholders and folks like yourselves about what we might be able to do about it. And we also have a long history here of working carefully with the fishing industry and trying to support each other and find policies that are mutually beneficial. And, when you get down to it, fishermen are interested in conservation because they know that their livelihoods depend on a sustainable ocean. We just got to work through the ways to get there and recognize that mutually held goal.
Yeah, totally agree. So, Heather, I'm wondering if you could just tell us a little bit, because the North Atlantic right whale is the state marine mammal. Many are familiar with the species, but for those who aren't, I'm wondering if you can just give us a little overview.
Sure, gladly. And I have been known to speak about right whales for long periods of time, but I will be brief. They are really a spectacular species and one of the great large whales of the world. And I find, in addition to the research that we're doing in present day, I find the history of the species particularly fascinating, including how they came to be known as the right whale, which is a question we get asked often. They were actually once found throughout the North Atlantic and were one of the first whale species to be hunted. They are slow moving, relatively speaking. They migrate close to shore. And then, so as such, they were pretty easy targets to hunt. They were really profitable as well, which was an important aspect of the hunt. They have really thick blubber layers, and so they yielded a lot of oil. And then their baleen, which are these plates that hang down from their upper jaw and they're used to feed, also called whalebone, were used to make a lot of different consumer products. So they were easy to get, they were really profitable, and so they were considered the right whale to hunt.
How many right whales are there, and how do we know?
So one of the really interesting and critical components of any right whale research, conservation, or management is actually the ability to distinguish between individual whales. So right whales have these patches of raised cornified tissue on the tops of their heads called callosities. And these tissues are infested with small crustaceans called cyamids, or whale lice, that make the tissue sort of stand out from the black background of the whale's skin. And so these are unique to individual right whales, like our fingerprints are unique to us. And so we can use those patterns to tell individuals apart. So the ability to do that has allowed us over the course of 40 plus years to study these animals at both the individual and the species level. So right now we estimate the population to be around or slightly less than 400 individuals. And so so that's a pretty stark low number. What's more concerning to us is actually that the number of individuals in the species has been declining since 2010. And we believe that there are fewer than 100 reproductive females remaining in the population that comprises this species.
Wow. I mean, that reminds me of watching that show, The Voyage of the Mimi, and they used to photographs of the humpback whales' tails, because in the same way they had these unique designs that would enable them to tell each.
Exactly.
Tell us about the reasons for the decline in the numbers, and I mean, what's causing these magnificent animals to die?
In a simple response, it's math. Excuse me. The number of whales that we're seeing dying is higher or greater than the number of whales that we're seeing born each year. And so we're removing more animals from the population than we are adding. In the last 4 years alone, we've documented 31 right whale deaths in just 4 years. We know that we likely document fewer than half of right whale deaths. So that actual number, the real mortality number, is likely much higher than that, unfortunately. Over the same time period, there have only been 22 calves born. So there's the math that doesn't work out. Higher deaths, lower recruitment into the population. And really, when we look at the causes of mortality, we're looking at human activities. So entanglements in fixed fishing gear and collisions with ships. On the entanglement front, since 2009, entanglements have been the leading cause of death for these whales. Even non-lethal entanglement events, so sometimes whales get entangled but can get out, we still see really bad impacts on those. They reduce reproduction, they elevate stress hormones, and reduce a whale's ability to feed. And so that's a problem. Collisions with ships are also a problem for this species. They're coastal. They migrate across these many ports in areas of high shipping traffic. And so we know that large and small vessels are capable of killing and seriously injuring these whales. In terms of the decline in calf and reproduction, there's probably a couple things going on. First, we know that reproductive females who are entangled delay their ability to get pregnant and reproduce. And so we're seeing females who have had entanglements, which there are a lot, extend the time between calves. We also know that climate change has shifted the distribution of right whale prey, their food items. And so right whales are having to shift their own distribution to go find these prey items. And that causes added energy requirements. And so females need a lot of energy reserves to achieve and maintain pregnancy. So it's probably going to take them some time to rebuild those energy stores. All of that is a little bit grim. And so I want to add one more bit, because any conversation about right whales would be remiss to exclude a conversation about hope. We are often asked, given all of this bad news, is there hope for this species? And I would say, my colleagues would say, without a doubt, yes. This is an incredibly resilient species, and when they're allowed to be, incredibly long-lived. We are confident that if we can remove or even significantly reduce harm caused by human activities, these whales will be able to adapt. They'll regain health and increase numbers to a robust species size. And so that is the ultimate goal. And we believe that we can get there.
So I don't think I have ever worked on an issue in my whole environmental career where the science and the solutions are so clear. And I learn something every time I listen to you, Heather, and it's so impressive. And the path is clear. So, Congressman, why has it been so difficult to generate, the political will to save these animals from human impacts?
I mean, it has been. It has been terribly difficult. I remember growing up, my mom always told us that she wished she had been a marine biologist, and I actually studied physics. But that makes me one of the only members of Congress with a degree in science. And the fact of the matter is that there are a lot of politicians who don't like to follow science, and that's a real problem. For those of you who don't know, my Save the Right Whales Act would create government grants that states, nonprofits, and members of the fishing and marine shipping industries can use to fund research and efforts that restore North Atlantic right whale population. So it's a great competitive way for folks to submit proposals and find innovative ways to save the right whales. And it's important to mention that I've worked very closely with my Republican colleague, Representative Rutherford from Florida, in the House, and then also Senator Cory Booker in the Senate to move this bill forward. So the legislation has made a lot of progress, and it's been reported out favorably in both the House and Senate committees. It's now awaiting floor consideration, but it has been difficult in this political climate to get this far. We're very, very close to having it actually passed into law, and we've, as you mentioned, gotten a lot of appropriation support, so a lot of actual money, put forward to support this work. But it's been a fight. It's been a fight.
That's terrific. You mentioned earlier, too, that obviously your district has a large constituency of fishermen in a state that values fishing as a core part of our DNA, of the history and our culture. How have you successfully navigated their support for the need to protect right whales with the needs of your constituents? That's got to be one of the hardest parts of your job.
Well, I've taken an unusual approach that comes back to my background studying science, which is that when I was elected, I was told you have to choose. Either you're with the fishermen or you're with the conservationists. Like, you got to be in one camp or the other. And I said, wait a minute, the conservationists want to conserve the ocean. The fishermen need a sustainable ocean to do their job. So why don't we just unite around the science? I mean, we all recognize that fishing is vital to the economy of the North Shore, and it's a huge part of our history, but it's literally not going to continue if you don't have a sustainable ocean. So what we've been working on is bringing people together around the science, finding good data to solve these big problems, whether it's cod, because there's not as much cod out there as there used to be, and that's like the iconic fish that New England fishermen catch. Or right whales, or anything else that has been traditionally a divisive issue. So we've had challenges with both communities for sure, but it's important. I think it's worth mentioning that the Massachusetts lobstering community in particular has been willing to engage on this subject, come to the table. It's challenging because we're asking them to make some changes to how they fish for lobster, which is something that they've been doing for many times in their families, multiple generations. And they're facing all sorts of other challenges, like right now, including the trade war the president started. So it's a tough time to be in the business, and we're asking them to do a bit more. But I think when they step back, they realize, hey, we have a chance to be part of solving this problem and making sure that the history of the right whale is secure.
Well, and I think this is part of why we love the SAVE Act and are so grateful to you for your leadership on that, because it encourages more cooperation between these stakeholders, among these stakeholders, and it helps to advance the use of technologies that will solve some of these problems. So given, though, that those some of those solutions are going to take years and lots of dollars to implement, are there other steps that Congress can be taking? Are there other things we can be doing to help advance the cause here, especially since right whales are protected under both the Endangered Species Act and also the Marine Mammal Protection Act? Are we thinking broadly enough?
Well, we've had to do that because, as I think we all know, Congress is not working as quickly or as efficiently as it should. So one thing we've done, which you mentioned at the top, is that we've secured appropriations funding, millions of dollars of it, in fact, for increased research and monitoring of right whales. Heather said that one of the most fundamental things you have to do for conservation is to simply effectively count the right whales that are out there and be able to track when we have more born and when, sadly, they die or get killed. And part of the funding is for acoustic and aerial monitoring. So we're using the technology that we have and every bit that we can think of to make sure we're doing this well. The Senate needs to pass similar funding levels, so we've got to get that through the Senate as well. And I've also led multiple letters to the United States Trade Representative urging them to compel Canada to do their part, because the whales are not just off our coast, they're off the Canadian coast as well. And I don't think Canada is doing enough to hold their ships and fishermen accountable. So we've got to make sure that happens too. The most recent death of a right whale was from a ship strike off of New Jersey. And we need to take a serious look at what regulations are necessary to avoid more of those ship strikes too.
Thank you. So how can the New England Aquarium help you advance this agenda?
Well, thank you for asking that, Vikki. First of all, just continue spreading the word. Let people know that this is important. I mean, share this video with your friends and family. People need to know that this is happening right off our coast, and there are things that we can do. As Heather says, we can solve this. Humans created this problem. We can solve it, and it's up to our generation to do that. So the right whales are around for future generations as well. When people call their own representatives in Congress and talk about this issue, it can help lead to greater awareness at the federal level. So talk about my bill. Say, hey, Congressman Moulton's got this bill called Save the Right Whales. You need to get on it. You need to support that. And talking to representatives throughout the area, up and down the North Atlantic seaboard is important. The Atlantic seaboard is important. Also, talking to local fishing communities. If you have any connections to local fishermen, talk about how we all need to come to the table to solve this problem, and they should be part of the solution. And then, support institutions like the New England Aquarium, because you're all doing the critical research that's going to make this possible.
Well, and at the risk of making a shameless plug for ourselves, I do think we are uniquely suited because we have the science and the advocacy and the education and this incredible platform in this iconic institution in Boston to help spread the word. And so we're so grateful to you for your leadership on this issue. I think we could probably go on all night talking about this issue. We're all so passionate about it. But I want to thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. I've really enjoyed speaking with both of you. The right whale is so close to my heart. I wore my scarf in honor of this, and I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to create the political will to generate real change and protect this species, especially now. It's on our watch that we have to make this happen. I want to thank you so much for your leadership in Congress on this and so many other issues. And I hope we can continue to count on you and others to be our voice for this and other issues on Capitol Hill. So thank you so much. And before we close, I'd love to give you the opportunity to make some closing remarks.
Well, Vikki, as long as I'm in Congress, you can count on me because this is incredibly important. And I'm so proud to partner with the New England Aquarium. You were part of my childhood growing up, helped spur my interest in studying science in school and bringing some of that experience to Congress where I think we can all admit it's desperately needed. So I'm very proud to work with you on this. And I am optimistic too, cautiously optimistic. Yes, we have a lot of work to do. This is not going to be easy, but we all know it's important. And our legacy should be that we save the right whales from extinction. And that's a legacy that we'll be proud to pass on to our kids. So thank you for your leadership, all the work you do in our community every single day. And we'll keep working together.
Thank you so much. If any of you are inspired, having listened to this, to help protect the North Atlantic right whale, and I hope you are, we invite you to do some of the things that the Congressman suggested. We invite you to visit the aquarium's website and to send us a message. And we can help get your messages to elected officials in Washington, asking them to support the SAVE Act and other measures that help protect right whales. In addition, and I would be remiss if I didn't say this, the aquarium is now open to visitors, which is terrific. We've been open for almost 2.5 weeks, but to very reduced numbers because we want to be safe. We want you to have a safe and fun experience. But we were closed to the public for 4 months, and that obviously created, some financial challenges for us. So if you'd also like to support the aquarium by donating, all of us here would be very grateful for those donations, and you can visit the website to figure out how to do that too. So thank you all. Thank you, Congressman Moulton. Thank you, Heather. We're so excited, and thank you for being here, and thank you for your leadership.
Vikki and Heather, thanks so much. Take care. Hope to see you soon.
Bye.